Hey everyone, it's Richard Metal Fan here, bringing you guys a brand new 2020 album review. And today we're going to be looking into the new album from the Black Dahlia Murder, entitled Verminous, which came out today through Metal Blade Records. Now, if you aren't familiar with the Black Dahlia Murder, you probably haven't listened to death metal or melodic death metal. They're a death metal band hailing all the way from Michigan, and these guys have been around since 2001. And the Black Dahlia, for me, are one of my all-time favorite bands, and they're pretty much the band, one of those first like gateway bands. I've been listening to these guys since I was in high school. They pretty much got me into like more extreme metal, like, or pretty much death metal in general. It's like them and Cannibal Corpse were like those first bands that really got me into like extreme metal and death metal, and then of course later on black metal and all that awesome good shit. And for me, the Black Dahlia Murder are pretty much, they just get better and better with each album. Like, I don't know how these guys are doing that. They've been getting around for getting close. Next year will be 20 years since they first formed, and I don't know how they do it. Do it since they first they put out their, and they're really consistent with each album. But of course, going into their debut album, which came out in 2003, which would be Unhallowed, which is a solid album. But in my opinion, I feel like it's probably their weakest album. Not to say that it's bad in any ways, but I pretty much enjoyed everything. But I feel like after that, they just gotten better and better with including their 2005 album Miasma, which is a pretty good album. And then 2007's Nocturnal, which in my opinion is probably their best album to date. I even got a tour shirt of this where I saw them play the whole album in its entirety a few years ago. That's another story. Then we go into 2009's Deflorate, which is a pretty good album. You can definitely tell like they pretty much have like they just stay true to what they do. And then 2011's Ritual, I feel like is their, in my opinion, probably their most diverse album. Like especially they have like the orchestration parts in there. It's which I don't think they've pretty much done since then. And then 2013's Everblack, which I thought was pretty good. One of my favorite albums to come out in 2013, and it's probably be my second or third favorite album from them. And then 2015 we roll into Abysmal, which I thought was a pretty good album, but I actually preferred Everblack more. But then Nightbringers, their previous album, which came out in 2017, which is a really good, really good album. I thought that was probably it's still probably probably maybe my third favorite Black Dahlia album. But here we are with album number 9 from the band, and this is surprisingly, I thought I would have expected this to come out last year, because like Black Dahlia releases an album every 2 years, but this is the first time they haven't done that at all. They haven't released it on an odd numbered year. It's now an even numbered, but maybe they'll make up for it next year. Here, but this album, the Verminous, I can't swear the album title just reminds me of something from like a spell from Harry Potter or something. But this kind of live up with what Nightbringers has. In my honest opinion, it definitely has. Like this, like I said, these guys can do no wrong. The vocal work from Trevor Sternad is just, I don't even know how he does it. Just he goes from like his trademark sort of like high, kind of like shrieky vocals to more of his like lower kind of like guttural stuff that he does is just insane. Like the dude's one of the best death metal vocalists I've heard. The guitar work in general is pretty tight. Brian and the Brandon just can do no wrong. Just like Brian comes up with some of the tightest riffs. He holds down the riff department good, and then just the shredding from Brandon ever since he joined the band is just mind blowing. The bass is pretty audible. Max Lavelle's bass you could definitely hear, and the drumming, I don't even know how Alan Cassidy does it. He's like, his drumming is just superb, and the blast beats he does is just great. So yeah, without further ado, let's dive into this album track by track. Now, starting things off is the title track, Verminous, which is an audio sample of sort of like driven laden sewer, because sort of like Verminous, and then we're off to a great start. Just like the main first riff is more thrashy than mellow death, that then sort of like skirts close to, almost kind of reminds you of something from like Revocation, which is no means a bad thing. And then moving on to Godlessly, which contracts the title track by having sort of like a high octane intro riff before setting into like tremolo picked catchy melodic arrangements. And the song kind of reminds you of something from like the song Death Mask Divine off of Nocturnal. Then we go in, next on the album is Removal of the Oaken Stake, which kind of takes me back to something from Ritual, which just has like ear-catching use of offbeat riffs, muted guitar chords managing to like harmonize with sort of like the lead melodies. And this is pretty much very well executed. A fine example of excellent mixing on a record. Right here. Blech. Then we go into Child of Night, which is a kind of a change of pace, focusing on sort of like the long drawn out arrangements, which are more restrained in its all out brutality and has potential of sort of like turning fans into of heavier, just faster tracks away. It is just very masterfully written. In particular, it showcases the artistic brilliance between harmonized riffs between Brian and Brandon, with more of their harmonized sections. There's like displaced from each other by sort of like a bar or two, lengthening the arrangement with sort of like the right amount of flair without relying entirely different riffs overlaid each other. And it pretty much also features one of the Brandon's like best solos to date, and Verminous is a record for pretty much allowing him to have more room to like noodle around. Anyway, moving on to Sunless Empire. Here, while it's sort of like maintaining the core of the sound, it feels like a love letter to 90s death metal, and that's sort of like it's the right blend of heavy coming from a slower instrumental passage and delicate vocal work to balance it all. I wasn't expecting a song like this on here, and I just can't picture anything else in its place. Moving on to the next song, which is the Leather Apron Scorn, which in my opinion is probably, I know I'm probably gonna get some hell for this. It's likely my low point in this release. It's not a bad track by any means, but doesn't bring anything new to the table. It almost feels like I don't know, but just maybe it sort of fits with the thematic elements. Regardless, this songwriting on this one didn't like stick out for me on here. Anyway, moving on to How Very Dead, and it pretty much showcases the vocal power that Trevor is able to display. He hasn't managed to make this song entirely his own with his fresh beat of like cannibal-esque guttural noises along with his signature higher range, and the guitars and drums take more of a backseat here, letting sort of like Trevor to show his vocal style. Anyway, moving on to The Werewolf's Feast, which is a strange one, not just by the title, but there's a lot of elements that are almost alien to the band. That being said, they pretty much harness it quite well. There's like a rawness in the vocals in the verses of the track that almost kind of sounds very hardcore punk influenced, that performed in sort of like death metal styling. The guitars are less frantic and more controlled. Well, it sort of like aided the drums that pretty much blends all together with into like a very different experience for the band. Anyway, then we go into A Warm and Dark Chrylis, which is kind of like a little interlude. It's sort of like something from like a folk metal band may throw in to fill in time sort of like a warning sign to come. I mean, the final tracks of the Black Dahlia Murder albums are known to be very beastly, perhaps the moment to calm the listener just prepared to what's next, but but not really. But then we go into the final song on the album being Dawn of Wrath, which hits fresh out of the gates. No energy was spared here, just technical blasting and tremolos in the verses, large bassy chorus, and a big crashing outro. All you could ever want in a final track. And this almost plays out like a death metal anthem. And that's pretty much one of the very, very rare days where I can hear the bass guitar, or especially the 5-piece band. And it's one of the standouts that Max had done. Now, overall, Verminous by Black Dahlia Murder is another good offering from this band. Like these guys can do no wrong. So if I were to give this album a score, I'm probably gonna give this a solid 8.5 out of 10. So yeah, that's our review of the new Black Dahlia Murder album, guys. Let me know in the comments what you guys think about it, and I'll see you all in the next video. And as always, keep it metal.